Hi guys, this is Arnav from the Tars marketing team. If this is your first time watching one of our videos, we help marketers increase their conversion rate 2 to 3x using conversational landing pages. And in this video series, we actually record the whole process of making those conversational landing pages so that you guys can replicate it if you want to. In this particular edition, we're going to be taking a look at Ally's mortgage landing page, which you can see on your screen right now. And as always, we like to start with a quick assessment of the page. And in this case, there are actually some things that I like about it. So to start on a positive note, the way these guys have handled text on the page is actually pretty good. Most prospects, when they land on a page, they don't read text from start to finish. They skim over it. And having the text organized as this numbered list makes it easy for people who are skimming. Where the page starts to fall down a little bit is on the right side of the screen with this form. And there are two issues with this form. One, it's too long. I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 12 to 13 fields in the form, which is just too much for a first screen. And some of these fields are extremely personal information. So, for example, a credit score is not something people are usually willing to share when they first land on a page. So, what I would do if I was committed to using a traditional landing page and I was Ally, is I would do what their competitors do, which is they have a staggered form. So they ask for 3 fields at a time. You submit 3 fields, you hit submit, you submit the next 3 fields, you hit submit, and then on the third or the fourth screen, you finally see the personal information like credit score and things like that. And that usually makes it easier for prospects to actually share their information. They feel more invested in the process at that point, and they're more willing to share it, and the conversion rate goes up. But we're using a conversational landing page in this video, so we're not really affected by that because each question gets asked one at a time. So with that, let's switch over to the TARS builder and start constructing a conversational landing page. And the first thing that we always do when we're making a conversational landing page is creating the hook. Now, the hook is a series of 3 messages. The first one is a welcome message. So welcome to Ally Bank. The second one is a value proposition message, and the third one is a ask message. So this is where you ask them to do something to proceed the conversation, followed by user input. So this can be a text user input, buttons, star rating, calendar, and time. It can be any of these user inputs. And the purpose this hook serves is essentially the same purpose that the text over here serves as on the traditional landing page. It's the first thing that a prospect sees when they click on your link. It's the first thing that they see when they land on your page. And as a result, you need to capture their attention when you phrase these messages. And we figured out that this 3 message approach is what really works. And the reason we like to have a welcome message first, and we also like to drop in a logo, is because it builds legitimacy. When people land on a page, they expect to see a bit of branding at the very least. So when I land on this page, I see the Ally logo on the top. I see that the colors of this text in the heading matches the general brand colors of Ally. And the purpose that serves is it just shows me that this page is legitimate. It shows me that this is actually Ally Bank advertising to me. If I landed on this page and none of this was there, it would be a generic looking page. And whether it's irrational or not, the alarm bells would go off in my mind and I think it's spam. I might close out of it. So that's why we like to have the welcome message. The second message is the value proposition message, and this offers continuity from user intent. So in this case, I actually landed on the page through a Google ad. I looked up Ally Mortgage while doing research about the mortgage industry, and Ally had the first link. Obviously, it's a branded ad. And when I clicked on the ad, I landed on this page. Now, to continue the user intent from my search, Ally has to speak to what I searched about. So in this case, I looked up Ally mortgage rate, indicating that interest rates are the most important aspect of a mortgage for me as a prospective mortgage buyer. Which is why if you go to their page right now, the first point that they bring up is low rates to help you save. This is speaking exactly to the problem I want to solve. Equally, we want to achieve the same thing in the second message of our hook. It offers continuity and it makes prospects realize that they are on the right page, that this company is offering them exactly what they need. So for example, think about a incorrectly phrased hook. If we said something like, we offer loans to people with bad credit, this is a novel point that they're making, but it doesn't really speak to what I was looking for. I'm looking for a mortgage with the lowest credit. And the mortgage which appeals to the person with the worst credit may not appeal to the person who's looking for a mortgage with the lowest interest rate. So I want to rephrase this to something like, our low interest mortgages help you save. And I'm going to make low interest bold, just to put emphasis on that point, because it speaks directly, again, to the user intent. And we found that this approach in the value proposition message actually captures people's attention. Sorry, and the reason it does is because it's speaking to the exact problem they're looking to solve. Once you've captured their attention, once you've made it clear to them that you are solving their problem, what you can do is make an ask of them, and that's what the third question. Serves to do. So in this case, in most mortgage cases, they usually make you fill out the lead capture form to give you a free quote, and then their sales team will take it from there to take you to conversion, to take you to eventually taking out an actual mortgage. So in this case, what we want to do is we want to make it clear to them that we want them to get a quote. And the way I'm going to phrase it is, if you have a couple of minutes, we can get you a free quote. And actually, I'm going to go back and I'm going to make free all caps, and I'm going to make free quote bold, just to put emphasis on this term. There are a couple of things to note about this ask. First of all, you need to make your ask as uncontroversial as possible. So in this case, when we ask them to begin a free quote, by saying yes to this, by agreeing to start the free quote process, it doesn't really affect the prospect in any way. They haven't given any personal information up. Unlike this form over here, where it immediately starts to ask you for your personal information. And that makes it easier for a prospect to make that first click and get invested in the conversation, because they're not really losing anything. If we had changed this to something like, what is your credit score? That's a very abrupt transition. That's asking for too much too soon, and it's definitely going to cause some people to drop because they're not willing to share that personal information right at the start. Which is why we like to make it uncontroversial. Something like, if you have a couple of minutes, we can get you a free quote. Because saying yes to this, again, it doesn't really affect the user in any way. The second added advantage of having an uncontroversial ask like this is you can make it easier for the user to respond. So for example, if we had asked for the credit score, it would have taken 4 taps for the user to respond. They would have had to type in the credit score, which is a 3-digit number, and then they would have had to hit send. And each tap is another opportunity for the prospect to drop. And you don't want the prospect dropping, because that's just wasting your marketing efforts. And if you're running Google ads like Allies, it's just wasting your money. So if you have an uncontroversial ask like this one, you can make it a button response. If you make it a button response, this essentially makes the process of responding a single tap. So if you have a couple of minutes, we can get you a free quote, and then the button says, get a free quote. And a prospect who wants the free quote just has to tap that. So I'm going to add an icon as well. The reason I like to add icons is because it gives users a visual cue on what is being asked of them. And human beings are visual creatures, so even something small like this clipboard with a check mark on it makes it easier for them to understand and fully process what is being asked of them. I'm going to hit save, and that's our hook. It's 3 messages: a welcome message, a value proposition message, a ask message, and a opportunity for the user to respond. Now we can actually move on to the actual lead generation flow, where we actually convert the fields in the form into a conversation. And this is also slightly different than a traditional landing page, where you don't really have to consider something like a hook. When you're asking for information through a conversation, it is very different than asking for information through a form. One of the issues with forms is that they are very impersonal. They don't feel very human. You can just say first name, have a blank field, and the user will fill it out. In a conversational landing page, since you are interacting with people through a chat interface, which I'm going to show you right now, it's bounded by the rules of etiquette when you are talking to another human being and when you're talking to especially another customer support associate. So you want to offer the best customer service possible within your conversational landing page when you're capturing a lead. That means you can't just go right into asking them for the information. You need to acknowledge the fact that you got input from them. You need to tell them where they are in the conversation and what's going to happen next. So in this case, they said get a quote. That means they tapped a button. I want to acknowledge the fact that they tapped a button and they've agreed to get a free quote. Let's say something like great, for acknowledging their user input. And now we're going to ask them for the first field. Now, in a form, you can ask for something like the first name and the last name right at the end. But since this is a conversation, you're going to ask for it right at the beginning. Because usually in human conversations, if you're speaking to someone you don't know, you are going to ask them their name first so that you know who you're speaking to. So in this case, I'm going to say, what is your full name? The reason I'm asking for full name is because this is in the context of a mortgage application, which tends to be formal. So let's change the name of this gambit. Put full name verification on. This just makes sure that they're sending you a full name. And then we can move on to the next field. Now, again, we want to acknowledge the fact that the user has given us input. In this case, they just gave us their name. So in a conversational manner, we can say something like, nice to meet you. And now we're going to pull their name from the conversation. So, nice to meet you, and whatever they responded with their full name as. And what's the next piece of information that we want? Do you already have an account with Ally? Existing account. Do you already have an account with Ally? And we can make this a button input as well. It just makes it easier for people to respond. It's a simple yes or no question. And hit save. Deploy this, refresh this page, and I'll just give you guys a sense of what this looks like in practice and what our end result is going to look like once we're done. So welcome to Ally Bank. Our low interest mortgages help you save. If you have a couple of minutes, we can get you a free quote. You hit get a free quote. It acknowledges your user input and then asks you for your name. I'm going to give it my full name, or let me just give it my first name. It's going to say, please give me a full name. I'll give it my full name. Say, nice to meet you, Arma Patel. Do you already have an account with Ally? As you can see, this process is already feeling a lot more human. It's already feeling a lot more personalized to a user than the form was. And this personalization, this extra effort that you put in to acknowledge their input, to say nice to meet you, and then their full name, is what really translates into the higher conversion rate. I'm going to turn branching off because regardless of how they respond over here, we are going to be showing them the same next field. And in this case, let's take a look at what the next field is. Buy home and refinance. I actually cheated a little bit. I created some of this lead generation flow earlier just because this form is so long and I don't want this video to go on for too long. And I really want to get to the later part of the lead generation flow because that's where it starts to get interesting. I skipped ahead and I added the next couple of fields. So I think I added everything from what are you looking to do all the way up to property state. So the next 4 fields. Now here's where it gets interesting. We are going to be asking for their home price and their down payment, and then we're going to be doing a calculation within the bot. But before that, let's acknowledge their input. So they just told us which state the house is in. One thing I like to do in finance lead generation is I like to say something like, oh, I have a cousin that lives in, and then we can reference the state which they just provided us. So if I responded with California, the bot is going to say, oh, I have a cousin that lives in California. This is home price. And the reason I like to do this is because there was this one time I went to a bank, I think to get a credit card, and they were asking me which state my college was in for some reason. And the person in the bank actually said, oh, I have a cousin that lives in that state. And I thought that was a human touch that you can only get when speaking to an actual human being, not filling out a form, that I like to translate over into the chatbot experience. And again, it just adds to that sense of personality, which creates the higher conversion rate. Now we're going to ask for their home price. How much does the home house cost? Sorry. I like the fact that they've used home over here because home feels a lot more personal than a house. So actually, let's change it to home. Make cost bold just to emphasize what we are asking for. And we can put the number keyboard on over here. And essentially what the number keyboard does is if you're on mobile and you're filling out this lead generation experience, it's going to slide up a keypad instead of a regular keyboard. And if you're on desktop, it's going to lock out the alphabet. It's going to only allow you to submit numbers to the landing page. Now we're going to ask for their down payment. So down payment. And I think this is where we need to start using fancier features. And what is the down payment on that? This is another great example of personality. I'm mentioning this a lot in this video, but there are different ways this aspect of conversational landing pages can manifest itself in the conversation. And what is the down payment on that is technically wrong grammar. You're not supposed to start sentences with and. But in this case, we want the conversation to feel more human. If I was actually accepting someone's mortgage information through a chat and they just gave me their home price, I would say something like, and what's the down payment on that? I wouldn't try to phrase my question in a way that's necessarily grammatically correct. I'd phrase it in a way that feels natural to me, and I'm going to try to replicate that in this chatbot. And that's why I'm phrasing it like, and what is the down payment on that? Let's turn number keyboard back on, because again, a down payment is a number. Also, let's just clarify that we want this in dollars. In dollars. Save. Okay, here is where things get interesting. Because I was going through this form earlier, I realized that this form has very specific conditions for what the home price and down payment have to be. So for example, the down payment has to be less than the home price, and the loan amount has to be $60,000 or more. So this is where the calculation comes in. I mentioned earlier that we're going to have to make a calculation within this bot. So for example, let's put 100,000 and let's put 30,000 over here. There we go. The loan amount is 70,000. It's the home price minus the down payment. And this amount has to be greater than 60,000. So we're going to have to do a calculation for that. And the way we do that is we need to use an API call. We need to actually use an external API to make the calculation of home price minus down payment and use the value that comes off of that to direct the conversation in different ways. So the way we use the API call is, I'm going to look at this bot over here where I've already made this API call before. We're using a service called math.js. So we take their endpoint. We come over here. First of all, let's rename this to calculation, because we're going to have to reference the data in here later. Delete the message. And let's paste the endpoint that we copied from this bot over here. Let's go to the data section, select raw in the top over here, and paste the data that we took from this bot again. The way this API works, I'll probably put a video link over here in the top right corner to explain how this API works in depth and how you can integrate it into your bots in depth. But for now, a brief overview. You basically call this API with a post request, and in this JSON over here, you can give it an expression. So for example, if I put 5 plus 4 in this, and I hit send, the response it's going to give me is a JSON with the answer, and the result over here is 9. So 5 plus 4 is equal to 9. It's going to give me the result. Over here, what we want to do is we want to subtract the down payment from the home price. So what we're going to say is the user response from home price minus the user response from down payment. Save. Now what's going to happen is the prospect is going to go through this flow. They are going to reach here. They're going to give their home price. They're going to give their down payment. The bot is going to make a calculation by sending it to math.js. It's going to do home price minus down payment. It's going to get the result. And what we want to do is check to see whether that amount is greater than 60,000. So we're going to turn the conditional jump feature on. We're going to add a branch and say, if the response, so pre.calculation.result is greater than or is less than 60,000, we want to go in a certain direction. And if you want to understand how we reference data, I'll add a link to the help doc, and I'll add a link to the video in the description and in the top right corner. So check that out if you want to know how to make this data reference like I did over here. Essentially what we're doing is we're checking to see whether the result of this calculation is less than 60,000. And if it is less than 60,000, we will go into branch 1. And in all other cases, or in other words, if it's more than 60,000, we're going to go into the default branch, which is everything other than the first branch. So if it is less than 60,000, what we are going to do is we're going to give them an error message. We're going to say, sorry, your loan amount does not meet our $60,000 threshold. 60 threshold. Do you want to re-enter the amount? And we're going to give them a button as an option to re-enter. So let's say re-enter home price and down payment. Use icons. And let's find a good icon for redo. I know there is an arrow. So, there we go. That works, I guess. Or yeah, I think this works better. Let's hit save. It looks kind of like the undo icon. So 60K. Save. And and we're going to reconnect this back to the home price gambit. So if they say they want to re-enter the amount, we'll take them back to the home price question and overwrite the data that they gave us. Now we can hit, actually we don't need to hit save, we're already out of the messages. We can build out the rest of the lead generation flow. So we have their home price, we have their down payment, we've calculated whether it's a correct amount. Now we're going to ask them for their credit score. This is another interesting one. We're going to use the conditional jump feature again. So now they have met the threshold, so we're going to say, amazing. Or we're going to say, your loan meets our minimum, your loan amount meets our minimum threshold. What am I typing over here? Your loan amount meets our minimum threshold. What? I just need your credit score before we can pass your details along to the team. Credit score bold. I'm going to add an emoji over here that's down pointing. And let's make it a number keyboard. Credit score. Estimated actually, because I think they only require the estimated credit score. This is not an actual credit check. And put the number keyboard on because credit score is always a number. And if I'm not mistaken, if I go back here and I give it a poor credit score, so 580 to 599, it gives me this error message. We don't offer products for credit scores below 620. So once they've given us their credit score over here, we want to check to see whether it is above 620 or below 620. So if it is below 620 rather, we're going to say user response in credit score. Credit score is less than 620. We go in one direction. In all other cases, we will go in this second direction. So if it is less than 620, we're going to give them the error message. Thankfully for us, Ally Bank has phrased this in a conversational way, so I can just use that error message as the actual message copy. I'm just going to split it up into a couple of messages so that it's not just one long block of text. It's going to be split up into bite-sized chunks. Bold sub 620 credit score. And we can end the conversation over here. Sorry, I have a bit of a cough if you hear me clearing my throat through this video. If they do have a credit score higher than 620 though, we want to congratulate them that they are eligible. Congratulations, you are eligible for a mortgage, and our team is working on your quote as we speak. So now I'm just notifying them where they are at in the lead generation process. We've got all the details that we need, and we are calculating their quote for them. And they are eligible for a loan. They meet the minimum credit score requirement. Now all we need to do is collect their contact information so that we can send them their quote. In this case, I'm only going to ask them for their email, because if this was an actual client, what we do is we use a SendGrid integration to automate the whole process. So the calculation happens in the back end, and then it sends directly from the conversational landing page into it sends directly from the conversational landing page to the prospect's inbox the actual quote amount. So over here, I'm going to ask for their email. Could you share your email ID below so that our team can get in touch? Make email bold. Also, you might have noticed that I keep changing the numbers in these green bubbles on the left side. These are delay bubbles. And what they do is they define the amount of time the typing animation shows before the message to the right of the bubble shows up. So in this case, I've put a 3-second delay, which means it's going to send this message. It's going to show the typing animation for 3 seconds, and then it's going to show the second message. And the delay serves two purposes. One, again, getting back to this recurring theme in this video, it makes the conversation feel more human, because when human beings are typing in a chat, they actually do take a couple of seconds to type. And when you add those couple of seconds, it makes the chat feel that much more real. And second, it allows the prospect to read the previous message before the new message shows up. So imagine you start reading this message. So you are thinking to yourself, congratulations, you are eligible. And then immediately the next message shows up. That's very distracting. It's very jarring, and it doesn't make for a good user experience. So we want to give prospects a little bit of time to finish reading the previous message before we send them the next message. And that's the second, more practical use of the delays. Let's just change the name of this gambit to email, put email verification on. Let's add the downward pointing emoji again. And hit save. And that's the end of our lead generation flow. We have successfully captured the lead, and we can close out the conversation. Thank you for your patience. Keep a lookout for our email. Keep an eye on your inbox for our email. Have a great day. rename the gambit, and we're done. That's the whole conversational flow created. There's only one more thing we have to do, and that is fix the branding on the chatbot. So over here, if I look at the conversational landing page as it looks right now, the message bubbles are blue for the user and they're gray for the bot. And that's kind of generic. It looks like iMessage, it looks like Facebook Messenger. It doesn't look particularly optimized for allies branding. And it makes the page feel generic, which again makes people think spam. And we don't want them to think that because it's going to cause them to drop. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this color picker tool that we have. You can get this on the Chrome extension store, the Chrome web store. They have plenty of color picker apps. I'm going to choose this color purple, or actually to match the color purple on the Ally logo, I'm going to choose the lighter purple of the Ally logo. Go to the design section, make the bot messages that color. Then I'm going to go back here, and I like the color pink, so I'm going to make the user messages pink. And I'm one of those guys who likes to make the background of the chat white so that it feels like the chat area is just an extension of the rest of the page if you're on desktop. If you're on mobile, it doesn't really matter because all you're seeing is the chat area. You're not seeing all of this extra space around. Let's hit save, deploy, go to configure. This is one thing I always forget to do, but another tiny piece of branding which a nice touch to have in your conversational landing page is to change the URL. Right now, if I go here, it says chatbot.hellotowers.com, which is generic. It says nothing about Ally. So I'm going to change the URL to say ally.hellotowers.com. Hit save, deploy, and you can leave the page. You can see the URL is updated. The design is updated. So now it actually matches Ally's branding, and we can go through this lead generation flow to show you what we created in this video. Hit get a free quote, give it my first name, my full name rather. Do you already have an account? I don't have an account with Ally. Are you looking for a new home or a mortgage? Let's say a new home. Noted. Is this your first home? Yes. When? Right away. California. This is a cool input UI that we've built into our builder. It's called the auto suggestion feature. So if I go back to the make section and I open up the state gambit, you can see that we've put auto suggestion on and we've added a list of US states over here. So the way it works is I start typing and it starts to give me the options that match what I've typed out. So I type in C and it shows me all the states which have a C in their name. I type in CA, it's showing me the Carolinas and California. At this point, I can hit California and hit send. And it reduces the number of taps I have to make as a prospect to finish that lead generation flow. Let's make it 100,000. What is the down payment? Let's make the down payment 30. That's a loan amount of 70,000. Your loan amount meets our minimum threshold. If you need I just need your estimated credit score before we can pass your details along to the team. So let's give them a random credit score. Let's give them a really low credit score just to show you guys how the conditional jump feature works. So I gave them a credit score of 580. Remember, our chatbot is going to check to see whether it is less than 620. And in this case, it is less than 620. And now it's going to throw us this error message and tell us to call the home loan advisor. And that is essentially how our lead generation flow works. If I'd given it a amount over 620, let's actually skip ahead. So credit score is 29. GID. If I had given them a credit score that was above 620, so let's say 621, congratulations, you're eligible for a mortgage and our team is working on your quote as we speak. Could you share your email ID below so that our team can get in touch? Give them my work email. Send. Thank you for your patience. Keep an eye out in your inbox for our email. Have a great day. If I refresh this page, we can do a quick side by side to give you guys a sense of how this conversational landing page compares with the traditional Ally Mortgage landing page. As you can see, the difference is evident just by looking at them next to each other. The original landing page looks pretty boring. It looks pretty unengaging. There's an extremely long form and there's a bunch of text that you have to read. As a prospect, this is essentially the same as going to a DMV and filling out a form that you need for your car registration or getting a license or something like that. It's just as impersonal. It's just in a landing page. The chatbot, on the other hand, the conversational landing page, it has as little text as possible on it. So it's easier for the prospects to read what's on the page. And the lead generation flow is done through a back and forth experience as opposed to impersonal form. It's done through an actual conversation with a virtual home loan advisor, and it makes the process feel a lot more human. And we found that the end result is an increase in conversion rate by 2 to 3x. So that's it for today. If you guys want to replicate this, if you guys need our help in replicating it, drop your landing page link in the comments below, or just get it to us through our lead generation bot. If you're reading this on our blog, in the bottom right of the screen, there should be a bot widget. Just generate a lead through that, and we will handle the rest. Yeah, that's it for today. Hope you guys enjoyed.